So today we're making sourdough, and this is a long time coming, this process. This starter that I did, let's see, 3 weeks ago, it is beautiful and ripe. I have the starter recipe on your PowerPoint, and I can create a separate recipe for that as well, but basically you feed it for 7 days to make sure that it's very, very strong. Because if you don't have a strong starter, you won't have a properly strong leaven. If you don't have a strong leaven, then you can't properly make your bread and it won't rise. So come take a look at the starter. I fed it this morning, and as you can see here, there's a significant amount of bubbles. And my starter right now, I'm feeding it only once a week because I'm actually not using it as often. So I will put it into the fridge after I use it today, and then when I'm ready to use it again the following week, I'll take it out, put it at room temperature, and then I will feed it again. Feed it the same amount every time, which is the 113 grams by weight of water and AP or bread flour. So looks good, and it smells wonderful. It has that really nice aroma, okay? So that's my starter, and I do have some starter discard recipes that I'm going to be posting as well, as a lot of people have been asking, what do I do with all of this extra starter that I have, okay? So quickly, let me talk about this. This is the leaven. You have your recipe for the leaven. It has starter in it. It has whole wheat flour, AP flour. Yeah, it's AP flour and water, and this has to build properly. If you can see from the side, you have the growth of the bubbles. This is about double the size that it was yesterday, and I know your recipe for the leaven says for it to rise for 5 hours. I don't trust the time, so I'm going to adjust that on your recipe. You have to look to see if it's ready. So this leaven requires another hour to make sure that it's properly grown. And what you're looking for here are the significant bubbles, the significant growth, but mostly when you look at the top, then you can see the bubbles bursting. That's what you're looking for, okay? This took me almost overnight to grow properly, okay? So we'll let this sit for another hour. I have my final dough ingredients here. So I have water, whole wheat, and bread flour, and I have my sea salt. It's very important not to mix the sea salt in, because the salt will draw out the moisture and it will not allow for full absorption during the autolyse process, okay? So the autolyse process, you add all of your flours in the bowl, and you add all but about 100 grams of the water. So why do we do this? Okay, so just leave about that much water, okay? Why do we do this? We do this because we want the flours to fully absorb and give proper time for the water to fully absorb into the flour. You have to give it this time, or else you might not get that proper hydration. So I already talked about hydration in the sourdough PowerPoint, and you can look to see what that is, but this is helping the process along. It helps the texture, it helps the elasticity. Okay, so just get in there with your hands and you start mixing. You see how I'm doing this motion like this? So I'm kind of squishing it. So I just want to make sure I don't have any lumps. Okay, now this recipe actually makes 2 batards. If you've never heard of a batard before, it's that oval shaped loaf versus a boule, which is a round loaf. Okay. So once you get to this stage where it's real shaggy, you want to try your best to get it to a semi-cohesive dough, okay? You're not kneading it. Actually, the interesting thing about sourdough is that you don't need to knead it, okay? The stretch and fold process is the kneading. It's in lieu of kneading. It builds the gluten structure, so you don't need to do it, which is great for your arms. Okay, so you see how sticky it is right now? I want to get all of these dry pockets out. So I want to incorporate this as much as possible. Okay. Now people might ask, can I just use a mixer for this part? You could, but the thing about sourdough is that it's very intuitive. And you got to feel it to understand how it works and how it behaves. So if you don't do it by hand the first, I don't know, 15 times, then you're not going to get very good at it. So it's really good to start off this way. And then if you're getting really good at it, understand the behavior of your dough, then I suppose you could switch to the mixer. But this is not that much work, okay? So you see how I have some dry pockets down there? I'm going to add a little bit more of the water, okay? Just so that I can get that absorbed. I'm very close. Okay. Okay. And this is it, okay? Your dough is not perfect at this point, but it has absorbed, and there's mostly all of this stuff gone from the bottom. So what I want to do now is take off all of this part. You can use a bowl scraper to do this. You can use your other hand. You can just peel it off. But basically don't throw all of this away because this is good dough. Okay? So I'm going to let this sit now for 1 hour, and then we will continue. All right, so it's been an hour, and I want you to see how the leaven has changed ever so slightly. It has more bubbles now, it's a little bit puffier, and now we're ready to add it to our autolyse dough, okay? So you can, if I take a couple of pokes there, you see how there's these air bubbles? That's exactly what you want, okay? Perfect. So take a look at our autolyse dough. When we left it, it looked really dry, and look now, it's absorbed that flour really well. And yes, it is not completely smooth, but remember, in the process of stretching and folding, the slap and fold, that's where we get our smooth dough, okay? So now we will add our beautiful leaven. Okay. Make sure you get all of the goodness. Okay, and we're still reserving that salt to the side, so don't add it, okay? And I want to go ahead and add half the leftover water, and I'm still leaving some. And now I'm going to go in with my hands and get this mixed up. Again, it doesn't have to be super cohesive because we're going to continue this process. So I take the leaven and kind of mix it with the water so that I have something to work with. And then I'm going to get my hands dirty. Okay, here we go. The dough right now is really sticky. Okay, it's so important that when you do any type of kneading like this, that your nails are super short and clean. And it's funny because I have a couple of Instagram people that are sourdough aficionados, they say. And I watched 1 or 2 of their videos, and they have acrylic nails. And I thought, okay, this is not appropriate. If you're kneading dough, you're not going to have fake nails. Okay. So you see how it's absorbing, and I'm still doing that same squishing because I really want to get all that starter and water incorporated into the dough. Okay. So I'm just folding it one on top of the other and squishing it. This is kind of a kneading process. This is probably the hardest that you'll be mixing the dough. Okay, and it's pretty much there. Okay, so I do have some liquid on my hands. Let me get that off because this is starter, so you want to make sure all of it gets in there. Okay. Now, we're going to leave this for 20 minutes, and then we will add the rest of the water and the salt. So I'm going to cover this up and we'll wait 20 minutes. So now it's been 20 minutes and we want to add the salt into the dough. Now you don't want to just dump the salt in. That's why we reserved some of this water. So we're going to put the salt into the remaining water and make a salt solution. This salt solution we will add to our dough. That way it gets fully distributed and we don't have to worry about granules of salt. Okay. All right, now we will put this into our dough that's been resting for 20 minutes. You will have a little left here. Just put that on as well. Okay. And now we're going to do something called slap and fold, okay? You take your hand and you cup it like this, okay? What you're going to do is basically go with your hand into the bottom middle of the dough and do this cupping motion, okay? It looks like this. So you do that one side, turn your bowl. Do it, and then you want to do that until your dough is fully incorporated, okay? So it's going to take 2-4 minutes, so let's do it. It doesn't make the prettiest sound, but that is the correct sound. Okay, here, let's turn it over. Get some of that salt solution in there, and then do that cupping motion again. Okay. Okay, what I'm trying to do is get all this gunk off of the sides. Well, let me just mix it a little bit more first before we do that. Okay. Okay, so now the salt solution is more mixed in and we can do that motion. Okay, flip the dough around. Let's keep going. So as you can see, the dough is already changing. Okay, look how elastic it's becoming. Right, and it's just a few minutes that we've been doing that. How do you know when this is done? Then you'll see that there's no more really liquidy stuff on the sides, but rather you have more sticky dough. So we're almost there. All right, see how it lifts off the bowl? Perfect. Okay, so this is our slap and fold process. We're going to let the dough rest, and then we'll start our folding. We're going to fold a total of 6 times. Now we start our stretch and fold marathon, because you have to do it 6 times. 3 times at 15-minute intervals, and then 3 more times at 30-minute intervals. This is what happens in lieu of kneading. So basically we're developing the gluten. Okay, so you want to get your hand really wet, dip it in water, reach to the bottom center of the dough, and then pull up, give it a little shake, and then fold it onto the dough. Okay, so we're going to do that in all 4 corners. You just, as long as you start with one corner, then you can keep going. Okay, so again, pull up, give it a little shake. Okay, you can already tell that it's quite elastic, but we're going to keep developing this glue. Okay, last one, up, shake, and over. Okay, so I'll show you pictures of what it looks like at every interval. That way you can see how it changes. So we're finally ready now to do our shaping for our sourdough. Now the instructions after the stretch and fold asks you to rest the last one for 1.5 hours. And like I told you before, it really depends on your ambient temperature and what's going on in your environment. You want the dough to have doubled in size. So I actually had to wait 4.5 hours for this to really double in size. Now I want you to see what the dough looks like. So see that it's puffed up quite a bit, and you can see significant air bubbles. See that? That is good. That's exactly what you want to see. There's one right there too. Okay, so now I want to bring the dough out onto the work surface, and I'm going to split it in half. Okay, so very carefully. Try not to deflate your dough because it's worked so hard to get it into this beautiful condition. Okay, take a look at that gluten structure. That's gorgeous. So right now we're going to split the dough in half. I'm just going to eyeball it. If you were at an actual bread house or something, then you'd probably be a little bit more careful about it. But for us, I'm just going to split them into these two. Okay. Okay, pretty sticky here. Okay. Okay. Perfect. So now we have 2 pieces. We'll go ahead and I'm going to get some flour here. I want to flour our bench scraper. Okay, and you're going to do let's move this guy over. Okay. Okay, so we're going to take our bench scraper and you're going to go on each side so you can loosen it. Okay, like that. And it also helps to make it that shape that you want. Okay, so you see how it's real sticky right here? That's what you want. And that means it's going to create a real nice sourdough. So now what we want to do is pre-shape. Okay, pre-shaping is basically just getting it into a kind of a round shape to start. Okay, so in order to do our pre-shape, we just need to do kind of this motion with the bench scraper. Okay, so we go from bottom and then we go up. Okay, go bottom and up. And then after you get it into that general round shape, then you can go lighter on it. Okay, you can push it up. Okay, and then you're going to pull it towards you. Push it up, round it, and pull it towards you. And you can see that it's starting to tighten up here. Okay, see that? Perfect. Okay, so that is our general pre-shape. We have it into a round, you have it a nice taut surface. This is going to rest for 10 minutes and then we will do the final shape. So it's been 10 minutes and you can see that the dough has significantly relaxed for the bench rest. And now it's time to final shape it so that we can let it rest or retard in the refrigerator overnight. So I have 2 containers that I'm going to end up putting these in. So I have just a regular mixing bowl, and I put like a dish towel in here, something that doesn't have a lot of lint. And then I have my oval banneton. So I wanted to show you the two options. Not everybody has a banneton at home, and so this is perfectly fine as well. Okay, so how are we going to start? We need to get some bench flour, and we need to make sure that one side is well covered, okay, evenly of course, to the edges too. And you don't want to smash the dough in this step. You're just very lightly getting it with the flour. Might as well do both of them while you're at it. Okay, and this is going to be the bottom of what you're stitching right now. Okay, so we're going to flip it over. So bench flour here, and then you want to do this in a swift motion. We're going to tuck this underneath and flip it. Okay, tuck and flip. Okay, and so I'm going to stitch the one for the banneton first, and basically it is a motion of 4 corners. Okay, so you take the top here. You want to make sure when you're doing this that you're not deflating the dough. Okay, so try to be as gentle as possible, and you bring it almost to the bottom, and then you hold it there, and then you take one side and you're kind of pulling it a bit, and the other side. Okay, and now from here we're just going to give it a roll. Here, let me move it. Okay, we're just going to give it a roll just like that. And you can see on the side here that we've created this little, the tuck, it looks kind of like this. Okay, now it's very important here that you create this shape, because it's going to expand upwards in the oven. If you have a different kind of shape, then you might have it expand outwards, and that's not exactly what you want. Okay, so let's flour this really well. Okay, and what I want to do is I'm going to then put it into my banneton. Okay, so very carefully take your bench scraper again. Okay, and then have it in your hand, and you see here how it's not stitched together. So you want to gently stitch it together, and we are bursting a couple of these air pockets, okay, but not all of them. Okay, get that little area, get the area here, and now this is ready to go into the banneton. Okay, I'm going to flour this a little, and in it goes. Okay, so you want stitch side up. You see that? And you can continue to pinch to make sure this is all closed up. Now this is going to get covered and put into the refrigerator overnight, and then in the morning you'll see that it has expanded quite a bit, and then we'll be ready to bake. Okay, so now for the round one, which we call a boule. It's kind of the same way that we're going to do it, but the stitching looks a little different. Okay, so instead of folding it this way, we're going to actually do more of the pulls. So this one, this one, this one. We're going to do the bottom. Okay, and now you can see we have kind of 4 corners. We got to pull those in. Okay, okay, and you want to give it a pinch. I'm bursting a few bubbles. That's all right. Okay, so since we got this all stitched, we can go ahead and put it into our banneton, our bowl that has the flour. Okay, carefully. Okay, and I like to flour the top a little bit as well. Okay, so now we're going to let this overnight ferment or retard, and it will be ready for us in the morning. Now it's the next morning, and we're ready to bake our sourdough. So this was resting in the refrigerator overnight. You see it has grown and it has relaxed. Okay, if we press on it, you can tell that there's growth, there's bubbles. Okay, that's what we want to see. So before I put it in the oven, I have to make sure that my oven is preheated. So your recipe says 500, but my oven runs a little hot. So I've set mine at 485. And this loaf I'm actually going to do in a Dutch oven. So the Dutch oven has to be preheated in the oven at least 30 to 45 minutes ahead of time. So before I do that, I want to score my bread. Okay. Now this is probably the most fun part. I've got a little piece of parchment paper. Okay. I'm just going to give this a flip over. Okay. So we waited for it to come out naturally, and this is what it looks like. And it has the markings of the Benetton here. But if you don't want the markings, we could have easily lined this with a tea towel. Okay. So now we need to score the bread. Okay, this is a bread scoring knife. It's also called a bread lamb. And the reason why we score the bread is so that it can release the steam. If you don't score it, it's going to explode in different places and it will not have its maximum growth. So the best place to score it is just off the center. And you want to score it at a little bit of an angle, not straight on, not here. Okay, that way you get the maximum growth. So you want to start here and you have to do a swift motion. Okay? Sometimes you have to do it twice in the same place just to make sure you got it. So you see here how it's releasing that area, it's opening up. Now I want to make sure this area is scored too. So I just double check. Okay? Alright, now it's time to get my Dutch oven. So my Dutch oven is super hot and I want to get this in as carefully as I can. Alright. So now it's going to go with the lid on. Hot lid as well. I'm going to go with the lid on for at least 20 minutes. And then I will open the lid and I will continue to cook it for another 20 to 30 minutes. Now, if it starts to get too brown, you can decrease the oven temperature 20 or 30 degrees. And don't forget to rotate it. There we go. My timer just went off, so I'm going to remove the lid and rotate the Dutch oven. So come take a look to see what the dough looks like. It's starting to brown, and look how it has expanded. If I don't rotate it, it's going to burn on one side. In for another 20 to 30 minutes. So we have our finished sourdough. This one baked in the Dutch oven, and it baked throughout the time at 485 degrees. So I rotated it, and if you listen carefully, you can hear the hollow sound. So I'm going to turn it over so you can see. Okay? Now I know it's tempting, but do not cut this. You want to wait at least 5 hours so that everything redistributes. The flavor is going to get better and better, and the texture. So, if you can see here, I just took it out of the oven. I don't want to mess with it, and I want to make sure that I have circulation, that it can cool all the way. Now I'm ready to bake my second loaf. And I'm not going to bake it in a Dutch oven so you can see another method. Okay, so we'll put this to the side. The second one I'm going to bake on the baking stone. If you don't have a baking stone, you can just do a sheet pan. That's totally fine. The only thing is you need a water pan. So I have some water boiling. I'll go ahead and put it into my container. And I'm going to pour this hot water into my little pan that I have at the bottom. And this is going to create the steam. And that way the environment will be nice and wet, so it will create that beautiful crust. Okay, so now we want to invert this guy. Okay, try to be careful when you do this step, because if you deflate the dough, you'll have worked so hard. You'll waste all that hard work. So this is a boule because it's round, whereas that one is the oval shape, which is called a batard. Okay, and you need to score this. Okay, I forgot to mention in the last video clip that both of these doughs have been coming to room temperature for a couple hours already, and that's really important so you don't shock the temperature of the dough in the oven. Okay, so the scoring pattern is really up to you. Just make sure that it's deep enough so that it really has some good release. Okay, so I'm going to do 4. Okay, I want to do that one a little bit more. Want to double check these. Okay, all right, so let's go to the baking stone. I'm going to open the oven first. Here goes my dough directly on the stone, and here goes my water. A little spill. Okay. Okay, in we go. Okay, so let me quickly talk about temperature. We're baking directly on the stone here. So we don't want to have it all the way through at 485 or at the high temp. So I'm only going to do this high temp for about 10 minutes. I'm going to decrease the temperature about 50 degrees. And then I will continue to cook and rotate the dough until it's done. Okay? It's been 10 minutes. Take a look at the dough. Okay? I'm going to adjust the oven temperature. Okay, now it's going to bake for another 20 minutes. Now our sourdough is ready. The color is right, and the main thing you want to look at right now is the color. Make sure that you do not take your sourdough out early. No blonde or underbaked sourdoughs. The color is going to contribute to the best flavor and basically complexity. Okay? Put it on our landing pad over here. Okay. So let's quickly talk about color. Okay. With color, you're going to get the flavor that you want, the complexity like I mentioned, and the main thing is the color is because of the Maillard reaction. And the Maillard reaction is something that we will discuss in the following weeks. And it basically means big, big, big flavor. Okay, so again, I'm going to let this rest for at least 4 to 5 hours before I slice into it. Okay? It's that moment. It's been 5 hours and now we can cut the bread. But before I do that, I want you to see and take a look. I know you can't smell it, but you can at least listen to the results. So come closer, and a really great loaf of bread, you can tell by the smell. You hear that? Oh yes. There it is. Okay. Let's take a look inside. Okay. Now the bottom is a little tough, so sometimes you've got to turn it on its side. Some people actually cut the bread upside down. Just depends on what the structure is. Okay, so this seems to be working. Okay. Take a look at our interior structure. Look at these air bubbles. Okay. The structure is bubbling evenly. We have a couple of large air pockets, but as you can see here, it's very consistent. Okay. The dough, it's also just a little bit moist, and it would be so good toasted with a little bit of softened butter. Absolutely delicious. Okay. Let's cut into the other one. I just want to see if they're different in any way, because we baked this one on the stone and it's also a different shape. Okay. Right away when I cut into this one, it's a little softer. It's already easier to cut too. Okay. Oh boy, interesting. Okay. So it looks like this one puffed up more on the top. And that could have been because it had a little bit more time at room temperature. It could have been because the oven spring in the oven, because we had the pizza stone. So either way, it'll be delicious, but the structure is just a little bit different, okay? So, see? Both really, really great. Okay, so I hope you have success with your sourdough. Remember that it is a very intuitive process. So any type of very strict structure or schedule, you want to make sure that you look at your dough and see if it feels right. Okay, I've given you all of the tips to see if it does feel right and look right. Okay, good luck.